to start by saying that I just appreciate teachers so much that you are here on your own time in the summer trying to learn things to take back to your classroom to help your students become better. I mean, teachers are just the most amazing people. And my favorite way to work with teachers is to like sit in your rooms and see your things and kind of get a sense of who you are. But Zoom is really cool too because we get to meet new friends all across the country. I have been a teacher. I have been a literacy coach, a curriculum writer. One of the highlights of my career has been being a Goyan Literacy Fellow. If you want to learn more about that, it is a fantastic experience and go Google them. In my current role, I'm teaching kindergarten. And probably the most important thing on that slide is that I'm a believer in evidence over ideology. And so I'm always wanting to search out the things that are going to work best for my students and kind of why they work best. So I am not a reader of slides. I follow Paul Kirshner's lead, where if I read to you what's on my slides, it is actually more cognitive load. So I'm just going to give you a couple of seconds to read two quotes that have really stood out to me recently. So if you're not familiar with Dr. Jim Heal, he is a leading expert in applying the science of learning into your classroom, bridging the world from research to practice. And as teachers, we know that what they do in research with some research assistants and 10 children can be very different than what happens in your classroom of 26 or 27 5-year-olds. So I love people who help us bridge that gap. And I love the quote from Alana Gordon, who is one of the hosts of the symposium. The data should lead us for more precise decisions. I see so many people who are collecting data and admiring data, but we're not sure what to do next with that data. So most of my experience in education has been in low-income schools. Currently, I am not, but it's only been a couple of years that I have not been working with low-income schools. And I would watch my students in kindergarten, and they would get up to at or above benchmark. And then I would watch them go into first grade, and some of them would start to struggle. And I had worked so hard in kindergarten getting them to grade level. And then I was frustrated because then we're starting in first grade and they're falling back. And a really successful reading coach in our district mentioned to me that we had a blending problem, not just in our school, not in even our district, but in our state. And so I wanted to look more into like, what's this blending problem and can that help my students be more successful even moving on to the next grade? But since I've been in education for a while and we see those pendulum swings, like I've seen good decisions and bad decisions. And Dylan Williams, who is a Welsh educationalist, uses these three questions before you bring anything into your classroom or your school. These are three excellent questions that we don't ask near enough, like compared to what, at what cost, and what evidence do we have? So these are three questions I ask myself now before I bring anything into my classroom. Because there's a lot of good things out there. But, when you're working with, the most highly impacted poverty kids, you need to get to the best things. So I pulled some data. This is state data. I live in Utah, so this is statewide Utah Acadians reading data. And you can see in the top of the graph, there is white and a K says 21-22. That's the school year. And then the first grade scores are 22-23. So this graph shows what they left in kindergarten and then how they roll back into first grade. So you can see that in kindergarten, there was, 70% the first year, and then you can see we're trending upward, which is good. And that's on the nonsense fluency correct letter sounds. So that's how well they're doing with that alphabetic principle. But look at the massive drop when they leave for the summer and come back into first grade. And it's like all 3 years. And that first grade drop in correct letter sounds and whole word read really match their ORF accuracy at the end of the year. So as I'm looking at this data and I'm thinking back, like, where's the problem, and how can I build back? if my students aren't really functional at that correct letter sound and even at that whole word read in kindergarten, and they fall back that much in the summer, I pretty much know where they're going to be at the end of first grade. So kindergarten does not have a whole word read benchmark in a cadence, if you're not familiar with that. But the beginning of the year benchmark for first graders is 1. So we're talking like 1 VC word that they blend together for them to be considered on benchmark. So that's not a really high ask. And even if you have 1, it's like you're only in the 44th percentile. So as I'm thinking about, okay, what am I going to do to help these students do more than what I've been doing? I thought about Aries phases of word reading development. So through letters training and other trainings, a lot of people are more familiar with these phases now. And what we want in kindergarten is for students to be meeting that full alphabetic, at least the late kindergarten or first grade. We want them to be in that full alphabetic phase. Of course, they're phases, so students are going to move, a little bit forward, a little bit back. It's not, a one-way path where they're perfectly in one phase. But to get them to this phase, we need massive amounts of segmenting and blending at the phoneme level, and we need students to attend to every grapheme. So those are things that I was thinking about, and I realized that this benchmark score of the correct letter sounds doesn't seem to get enough of the students to that full alphabetic stage to encourage the orthographic mapping that needed to occur. And I'm pretty certain that every kindergarten teacher across the state of Utah is teaching blending. But what is it that we're doing with the blending that isn't making it stick? Or as Dylan Williams would say, like, compared to what? So here's my classroom data, and this is going to be my whole word read data at the end of the year after using the 2 strategies and others, but 2 that I will talk to you about today. So in the nonsense word fluency whole word read for a cadence, if you're not familiar, it's blending VC or CVC nonsense words. They have 1 minute. They only get the whole word read point if they push through the sounds 1 time to say the word. They can't repeat anything or repeat the word. And the goal, like I said, for kindergarten is 0, and the kindergarten goal is 1. So at the end of this last school year, I had 4 students who could read between 6 and 9 whole words, which puts them in the 68th to 71st percentile rank, meaning that they are performing better than 68 to 71% of students who are taking this Acadience test. I had 9 who were between 10 and 20, and 11 who were between 21 and 43, which shows me that what we're doing in class is working, not only with that correct letter sound, but pushing them to blend the words. So we know blending is critical for reading. And early in my career, and you guys, this was back in the 1990s. So we taught a letter a week. And then at the very end of the school year, we would blend a little bit. But now we know that as soon as they know 4 to 6 letters, we are going to start blending. And then we need to teach the students to attend to every grapheme. As human beings, we often take the path of least resistance, and students will take the first sound and guess the rest of the word if we don't push them to go all the way through the sounds, because that is the path of least resistance. I've noticed my most struggling readers are the ones who want that path the most. And when students are learning something new, practice alone is not enough. We have to model, very clear modeling with what we want them to do. So we need explicit instruction, strong modeling with multiple opportunities to respond. I have probably doubled, maybe even tripled my blending practice time. And then now I use connected phonation or continuous blending. Now, the connected phonation research was done by Gonzalez Frey and Airy in 2020. And if you have ever had a student who said at and then comes up with like tap, you can see how easily breakdowns can happen when they're blending. But connected phonation keeps students anchored to the sounds all the way through the word. And I also use body coda blending when you have stop sounds instead of continuous sounds, so that it helps push through those sounds. So it's also referred to a continuous blending. So if you hear those, don't be confused because they're the same thing. And in this research, it was interesting because they taught the students to connect the phonemes, but they used continuous sounds, those ones that you can hold on to, like and they used those when they did the teaching practice. But so instead of saying map, you say map, and you connect those sounds and you always keep them connected. It's actually a little bit harder sometimes, I think, for me to connect them than to separate them or segment them. It doesn't seem natural to me. It took practice for me to push myself to also do that. But when they assessed the students, not only had they improved being able to blend with the continuate sounds, but they had with the stop sounds as well. So that has that transfer that we're always looking for in education. I want to teach them one thing and I want to have them transfer it to something else. When they looked at the results and the testing, their thoughts were it reduces the issue with the schwa when you're blending. And it's also good for the working memory because students are less likely to forget that first sound by the time they've gotten to the end sound. So they just hold it the whole time. So students with this strategy learn more quickly and decode more accurately. So I'm going to show you a couple of videos from my classroom. The first one is earlier in the class in the year. And when you start this, you want to become what somebody has coined the phrase gentle insister. So you are just going to keep gently insisting that the students do this. And you're going to model, 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 because the students are going to try to take the path of least resistance. So this is earlier in the year, and you can see that we will blend and say the word each time. We are going to push through all the sounds. No guessing. I will change one sound each time that I change the word. It will just be changing one sound. 1, 2, 3. Fog. Read it. Fog. We'll be changing just one sound. 1, 2, 3. Cog. Cog. Nice work. Don't let this one trick you. 1, 2, 3. Dog. Dog. Raise your hand if you have a dog at home. 1, 2, 3. Dug. Dug. Like we went outside and dug a hole. Is dug a who or a do? A do. Yeah, it's something that we're doing. 1, 2, 3. Dig. Read it. Dig. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Gig. Read it. Gig. A gig is like if you are a musician and you have a job to do, they call it a gig. So if you're in a band and you go to do a big performance, it's your gig. 1, 2, 3. Gag. Gag. If you eat something you really don't like, you can gag. Is that a who or a do? A do. 1, 2, 3. Gag. Gag. Do any of you have a gap in your mouth right now? Yeah, did you lose some teeth? Okay, so I'm going to stop that one there. You can see at the very, very beginning of the year, my teacher voice was in there modeling along, blending with them really loudly. You can see at this point, I'm kind of quieter and just jumping back in if needed. But they have to push the sounds together every time. I have another video of a small group, and this group of students is learning how to push through and then not recode the word. They're to that point where they can always push through accurately. So they're trying to learn to kind of drop recoding the word.
Hey, Parker. Today we are going to be working on blending some sounds together. When we've been working on blending sounds, we've been trying to push our sounds together, keep them all connected. Today we're going to keep working on that, trying to connect our sounds. Hold one sound, push it to the next sound, push it to the next sound, and read that word. Push all the way through. So I'm going to get my dice out. You guys want to... What did you get?
6.
Okay, everybody put your finger under the first word on 6. We're going to read 2, so let's start with 1. 1, 2, 3.
Men.
Good job. Who can tell me men means? What does men mean?
It means more than one man.
More than one man. Excellent. Okay, cross that one out. We got to read another one, though. We're reading 2, so put your finger under the next one. We're going to push through that sound. 1, 2, 3. Nice work. Can you use pet in the sentence, Friendly?
I have a pet.
Okay, so we're over here to Millie. Roll, Millie. What'd you get?
2.
Okay, we're going to put our finger up here. Push through. We're on 2. 1, 2, 3. Nice job. You guys are doing so good at pushing through those sounds. We're going to do a second one. Put your finger here. 1, 2, 3. Roll the dice. She got a 4. Here we are on 4. Everybody put their finger on the first word on 4. Brindley's still getting a 4. 1, 2, 3. Oh, that is not an ah. No guessing. Let's look at that vowel sound. It is an eh. Try it again. Leg.
So anytime we move up to something that's more complicated, like a CCVE word, then I will jump back in, I will model loudly again, and then we will recode the word and then move towards, use some guided structure to move them to be able to do those things independently. So if you can do a stop and jot for me just really quick, can you list 2 benefits of using continuous blending in your classroom? If you have any questions too, you might want to jot them now and then we'll answer them during the question and answer period. We are going to jump into the second strategy that I wanted to talk to you about today. And if you've been in some of the other sessions, it's very similar to Switch It that you saw earlier. It's word chaining. And when you think about word chaining, I wanted to look at the instructional hierarchy that has also been highlighted in some of the other sessions. When we think about how learning happens and students start in acquisition, move to fluency, and then generalization, adaptation. What I love about word chaining is that students are kind of working in between some of these. They might be working to acquire a new letter and sound, but they're fluent at some other letters and sounds, and they're maybe even generalizing some other pieces. And so it's kind of a masterclass in working through an instructional hierarchy as you use word chaining. And it also aligns nicely with continuous blending. So here's some classroom data that I have at my Acadience end of year results for correct letter sounds, which is that alphabetic principle. I had 22 students above typical and are above benchmark and 3 at benchmark. Now, always comparing apples to apples. I work in a higher socioeconomic school now. Like I said, this is a new experience for me, but 74% of my students started the year as above or at or above. And I had no ELL students. So I want to show you the growth also, because that's an important factor when you're working with students in this range. And I had 14 students who were well above typical growth, 9 who were above, and 1 who was below, who had been tracking as typical, but had a real rough assessment day. So even the higher students are growing well above using these types of strategies. So there's been a lot of conversation, if you're in any of the science of reading world, about phonemic awareness and phonics, and if phonemic awareness should be done orally or linked to phonics. And this quote by Holly Lane is one of the most clear explanations that I have found. So if you just want to take a second and read that. So when you're word chaining, you are going to be linking the phonics and phonemic awareness. Word chains are carefully chosen list of words that incorporate encoding and decoding. We're going to help students learn common spelling patterns by noticing similarities and differences. They change one phoneme at a time. And if it's like a double O where there's two ways to pronounce it, you're going to just choose one of those. They can be designed, you might want to target a single skill, mixed skill practices. You can be at the onset rhyme level, you can be at the phoneme level. So you can build these for whatever you need. And in my kindergarten classroom, we use manipulative letters. If you can see the little screen, oh, it's blurry, but I have little tray covers and I'll link you to what those are if you're interested in it. But that helps them a little bit more. The segmenting and blending becomes more concrete for them, and it helps me do more words faster. You also can use whiteboards and write and erase, and we do those when we get to like double L and double F. But the magnet letters are a little bit faster, a little bit more efficient for us. So a couple example routines is here's one that's at an onset rhyme level. So you would say build map. Now change map to nap. So they're encoding. They have to figure out the isolate a sound, figure out which one, change it. And then after nap, you would say change the N to an S. And at that point, they're going to have to decode that word because I haven't said that word. So then we have to put our finger under that word and read that word. Then I switch it back to encoding. Now change it to rap. So they're isolating and, segmenting phonemes. And then we're going to change the letter again and move it back to decoding. So it moves back and forth. Here's another example of one that is a mixed review, because we're moving back and forth between the CVC words and the CVCE words. And so it's really versatile because you can design it however you need it for the student. And it really is easier if you have programs that have these built in, but there's some available for free in some different places, and you can build them based on your own curriculum as well. So here's a couple of videos of my class using the word chains. So the first one is when we're going to be doing some CVC words. Your first word today is wrap. Remember yesterday? We did wrap. Let's pound and sound it. Wrap. 3 sounds. Pull them down. What 3 letters, Millie? Very good. I'm still watching for all 3 letters. Sammy, do you have all 3 letters? Okay, we're going to change wrap to rip. Wrap to rip. Wrap to rip. Wrap to rip. What did you change, Rudy?
The A to the I.
The I. Wrap to rip. So Sam, if you move your hands away from them, then I can check quickly. Evan, the same way if you move it away. Okay, say goodbye, Pete. Hello, D. We're looking for a D. What happens with the D? Which is first, the line or the circle? Okay, I can see some people have already put their finger under the R. They know that we're going to put our finger under the R. Daphne, finger under the R. 1, 2, 3. Rid. Rid. Now, should your eyes be on me? Now, we're going to try it one more time with your eyes on the letters. That's how you read. 1, 2, 3. Rid. Rid. I want to get rid of the garbage. Can you change rid? Daphne, eyes up. Rid to red. Rid to red. Rib. Rib. It was rid. Where's the D? Now rid to red. Rid to red. Red. What did you change, Jet? Nice work. Can you say goodbye, R? Hello, B. Which one comes first on the B? Line. It does look like a bed. So I'm looking to see whose finger is under the B ready to read it. Spencer's is, he knows we're going to read this one. Put your fingers under the B, finger under the B. 1, 2, 3, bed, bed. Let's see. So you can also notice that it's teaching them the alphabetical order because they have to think about where the letter goes. And then when they hear that next sound in the next letter, then they have to understand the order of the letters to find it and bring it down. The second example is when we're just starting to do the C words. And so it's a little bit more complex. So we're going to go a little bit slower. I'm going to model the sounds a little bit slower. So at each time that we add complexity in what they're supposed to be doing, then I kind of slow it down a little bit. We're going to pound some of these because we're moving into the 4 sound words. So we're going to say the word, I'll say the word, you say the word, we'll pound the word, and then I'll have you build the word. The word is crib. Say it. Let's pound and sound it. Crib. Okay, the first decision we have to make is k. Uh-oh. We know 2 letters that spell the k sound. Is it a C or is it a K? So K takes I and E, but C takes A, O, U, and other consonants. So is it a C or is it a K? C. It is a C. Oh, I told you today was going to be tricky. K. R. I. B. R. I. B. We should have 4 letters when we're done. Rib. Rib. What 4 letters did you use, Remy?
C, R, I, and
You know, I'm going to use Daphne's to show. Watch carefully because we're looking at more sounds than we have been used to. May, eyes up. Crib. We're going to change it to crab. 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 So look at the sounds very carefully. Crab. Crab. What did you change, Lourdes? Yes, it was the I to the A. Do we still need the R in this word? Oh, yeah. Okay, we're going to say goodbye, C.
Goodbye, C.
Hello, G. Then your finger goes right under the G. We're just checking to make sure everybody got their G. Lourdes already has her finger under the G. So does Hunter. So does Logan. We're waiting for a couple more friends to get their finger under the G. Okay, eyes on the word. Make the sounds. Grab. So you can see, oh, doesn't want to stop. You can see that slowed down a little bit there and then held up the board so they could see, have a little bit more scaffolding when they move into something that's more complicated. So if you take a second and maybe just list 2 benefits of using word chaining in your classroom. So in today's educational landscape, there's so many things competing for teacher attention. There's so much information out there. So for me, I've started to try to find the best bets. And the best bets have to be an integration of what research tells us, but then how you're applying it into your classroom to get the kind of results and learning results that you want for your kids. And so let's go back to the questions that we asked at the beginning. Compared to what, at what cost, and what evidence do we have? So on connected phonation, if you compare that to segmented phonation, we know that connected phonation will move students more quickly to orthographically mapping those words, which will help us have more students read more whole words, being able to blend, which means that in first grade, they're going to start off at a better place, which will then lead to their first grade oral fluency scores going up. And I've linked the evidence to that ARI study. And on the second strategy, word chains compared to what? There's a lot of oral only phonemic awareness practice. But what the evidence is showing us now is that if we get down into the segmenting, the blending, and the isolating, those are the three most important skills to help students become readers. And also, word chaining allows all my students to build all those words. And we'll get through 10 to 15 words a day, and we word chain twice a week. And any students who aren't being able to keep up, then they also get more word chains in small groups, and to help them be able to do it fluently, and also just to understand their letters and sounds, that alphabetical principle. And so many students are responding and participating versus just, having a single student up in front of the class blending a word. So we ask at what cost. Word chains are super efficient, and all students are responding, not just a one or a few or the ones who already can read. And I've also linked some research there to the importance of word building. So in my best bets, if research comes out with something else that's better, am I going to switch? You bet I will, because I know that's what will be best for my students. But right now, I have found huge success with these two very easy to apply in your classroom strategies. So does anybody have any questions?
So we have a couple from Mark. First, would the continuous blending be slower or different early on? Because your kids seem pretty confident in the videos. So
I
what does it
probably
look like at the beginning?
I I probably did start a little bit slower, but I'm thinking that video was probably like November. So it's not, really far into the school year. But at the beginning, that my voice was a lot heavier in it, map, map. And then as I noticed they are starting to get better at it, then I start to, quiet my voice down or pull it out altogether. But then if they don't continuously blend, my voice is right back in there every time. Just that gentle and sister.
And then when you're when you're pounding out a word for spelling, you don't continuously blend fully when
Not
tapping
for
out or pounding
not for
out a word.
segmenting, because you're not going to continuous blend when you're segmenting. But if we're segmenting the word, map, you're going to pound it, map, and then the three sounds, or people tap, whichever your method is, but we pound the word and then make each of the sounds. Since we're segmenting, we're not blending it. But then on the word chains, when you're decoding, then you're going to continuously blend it back together. So you notice that when we were blending there, we still used the connected phonation. So they just have so many more opportunities with connected phonation than they ever did before I started this.
Can I add on a little bit?
Yeah.
Would that be true with so I teach most of my students are Spanish speaking, home language Spanish. And so not necessarily fully alphabetic when they get to my first grade classroom, probably very, very much not so. Would I be more deliberate with the sounds early on, or start, you know what I'm saying? Like when I'm decoding a word, would I be to make sure they know that sound is ah?
Yes, and before we're word chaining, then they're instructed on the letter and the sound. And like I said, we start with 4 letters. So there's 4 letters on their board, and at that point, I think we could build like at, sat, and mat, So I'm only modeling those words to them, at. and then mat, mat. So they start out with such a small piece, so small chunk of knowledge, and then build it up as we add each letter. And that I would recommend that. I am not an ELL expert though.
Okay, so I know you brought this up earlier, but my question is, okay, so how did they end with our ORF at the end of the school year? Because this is a big issue we're seeing with our first graders. So yeah.
So how do my students?
Yeah, yeah, just curious how the ORF ended
So
up.
I don't get to see all of my students'
Oh,
data
oh,
always.
because you're kindergarten, that's
Yeah, so I don't
right.
get to see the
Oh
first,
yeah.
but I do have a friend at the school who lets me peek at times. And so I noticed that my students are not the ones that end up in intervention in first
Mhm.
grade. They let me peek at the beginning of the year assessments, and none of my students had slid back into uh, like a below proficient. They all had stayed at or above. I can't control what instruction they get in first grade, but there's less of my students than other teachers' students who are ending up in intervention. And so I'm hoping that if I can get them that beginning first year assessment, and they're higher, then they will also be higher on their ORF.
Yeah, 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 that's interesting. Do you ORF your kindergartners just out of curiosity? Do you just for fun?
No, but we read passages like every other day. So like I don't do it as an assessment for most of them,
Mhm.
but there's just like I read with them constantly. I mean, I have between 24 and 27 students. So managing all those students is a lot, but I just so much believe in more blending practice, especially with these types of strategies, because I've just seen such a change in their ability to kind of hit that full alphabetic principle and kind of take off in reading, what Mark Seidenberg talks about when they that set for variability, when their brains just kind of have enough phonics to kick in and start reading, than before when I was really slow in practicing the blending and I was using segmented blending.
What do you do when a student identifies each sound correctly when blending, but then when goes to say the whole word together, starts with the last sound? For example, um, pat, it would be pat, and they say tap instead.
And since I have started with the connected phonation, I don't have nearly the problem with that. Because if they're always holding it, then it doesn't tax their working memory as much. So if it's pat and they're pat, pat, they hear the word better. If I break it at all, then they're more likely to flip it. And so if they were still breaking it with connected phonation, I would just continue that. Your voice is the model over and over and over again until they are starting to hear it and you can pull out a little bit. It's like you almost have to over model it until you're sick to death of modeling it.
Yeah. Yeah. We're gonna wrap up here in a minute. Anything else, questions or anything you wanted to share really quick, Anjanette, before I give the last
In the
things?
resources, then there is a link to a video produced by UFly that shows how to do the word chains with the decoding and then flipping to the encoding practice. There is a link to a Substack post that has videos in it about word chaining. I just got to have a fun experience and record a Melissa and Lori Love literacy podcast where I talk about the same things that we talked about here. If you want the magnetic letters, the ones I have are linked here. And then I do use range clean square burner covers that are just the right size for the magnetic letters. And they're available at all those places, or the dollar store cookie sheets are amazing too. If that's, I think those are a little bit more affordable, but take a little bit more space to store. And then here is my contact information if anybody has questions they want to reach out. I just love helping teachers find their next best step.
All right. We do have one more question really quick. Do any of your students also get intervention supports? And if so, do those interventions just increase more practice of these strategies?
So I do, we don't have intervention supports unless there's an IEP in kindergarten. So I do get some small, oops, I want to stop sharing that. I do get some push-in tutors for 12 minutes a day. So we break into small groups during the push-in tutors. And the two most effective strategies, because the word chaining I use is in the U-Fly program, but I understand not everybody gets to buy a program or get trained in a method. So I wanted to keep this kind of program agnostic. But the two most important, or the things that got the best bang for their buck, were the word chaining and sentence dictation. So students will get more instruction in the letter sound instruction, then they'll get word chaining and sentence dictation. And I found that for most students with those things, I can kind of catch them up to the class.